This is because in addition to the vowels rhyming, the consonants also rhyme here as well. But what's really crazy about this particular verse, and I think that this is intentional, and if it is, it's just mind-blowingly brilliant, is the structure of the English, Japanese English. はい、皆さんこんにちは、道元です。僕はですね、普段から日本語でコメディ動画を作っています。例えば、外国人が日本語を学んでいく過程でよく直面する面白い場面を、描いた動画とか、日本語で言葉遊びをした動画とか、で、それとまた別に、日本語の肯定アクセントと日本語の発音を外国人向けに教えています。例えば、flower、花と、nose の、花の違いは何ですか？これをほとんどの日本人に聞いたら、一緒じゃないですかってなるんですけれども、答えは、助詞のつき方が違うんですね。こっちは花が、flower が花がですね。こういうことを、普段から、外国人向けに教えています。言語学者として若干スキルを持ってるんですけれども、で、それとまた別に、普段から、日本語で、クリエイティブライティングもやっているので、今日はその二つのスキルを組み合わせて最近ものすごくバズっているCreepy Nuts の Bling Bang Bang Born っていう動画を分析してみたいなと思っています。よろしくお願いします。All right, so there's already a ton of stuff I want to break down in this first line, but what I'm going to concentrate on is why gifted and wanted are transcribed with Roman characters and Chito is transcribed with katakana. I think there's a couple of things going on here. Basic music theory kind of says that if things are too unpredictable, then it becomes chaos and the sounds become sounds and not music. You have to have some structure such that the listener can kind of anticipate what might be coming, but then you have to pleasantly surprise them and make things a little bit unpredictable as well. That's what makes the music enjoyable as opposed to monotonous. And of course, that's true for the melody and the song and the flow, the music, but also for the way that the lyrics of this song are transcribed. And what I mean by this is we see Chito, gifted, Arawaza, wanted, Japanese English. There's a little bit of structure there, but there's variety too, not only between the Japanese English, but also between the two kinds of Japanese. We see Chito, loanword Japanese, Arawaza, that's kind of more traditional Japanese. So even in this very first line, it's very musical in terms of the transcription as well. Now let's speculate a little bit about why it might be transcripted in this way on top of just adding to the kind of, again, musicality of the transcription itself. I think that the surface level argument is, well, it has to do with pronunciation and how difficult, how natural it is to write these words in Japanese. So you could say like chito, cheat. That's not that difficult to represent in katakana. So maybe he's using katakana there for that. But gifted, giftedo, that's a little bit more difficult. You have to kind of force the sounds a little bit more. So maybe one of the reasons that he's using English for certain bits and Japanese for the others, katakana for certain bits and romaji for the others, is because of how natural it is when you're trying to represent the sounds of the various words. And that could be happening, but I think what's actually happening is that there are a lot of foreign loan words. When they become part of Japanese over time, their meaning starts to change as well. So like a really good example of this is the word naive. Now in English, when we say naive, it kind of has this implication of you're sheltered, you don't know too much about the world, you're a little bit ignorant. But in Japanese, naive, the meaning that most Japanese people, I think, would think of when they hear that word is less of like this ignorant, not knowing too much about the world. And it actually kind of has more of this, like you're sensitive, you're overly sensitive meaning to it. So like if someone said in Japanese to you, "Ya, omae naive da na," then it doesn't mean so much like you're so sheltered as it means like, wow, you're so sensitive, like you're too sensitive. And so because of this discrepancy between the Japanese version of the word and the English version of the word, the meaning can change based on how the word is written down, if you see what I mean. And so I think that the reason that Arishite, the rapper, is using Roman characters, English, to transcribe gifted and wanted is because he wants to keep the English meaning of the words as much as possible. What I really like about the second line as well is that the two ends of the line, kinki and moten, we've got a kanji compound on the beginning and end of this line. And then in the middle of that are two Japanese words that are a mix of kanji and hiragana. So kinjite and then also akiraka. So again, it's structure and variety. So sick. I love it. So again, the flow is just like next level. What I think is really, really, really interesting about this line, this magure. When I was listening to this song the first time, kind of more passively, I thought he was saying magure, two times back to back, as opposed to saying bagure and then magure, two separate words. This is because in addition to the vowels rhyming, the consonants also rhyme here as well. Now, what I mean by this is that if you take the first sound of B and the first sound of bagure, that's a B, right? And then if you contrast that or compare it to the first sound of magure, that's an M. Now let's break down these sounds phonetically. What is a B? A B is a voiced bilabial stop. What does this mean? This means that it's voiced because we're using our vocal cords. We're using our vocal cords. It's bilabial because we're using both of our lips. That's the point of articulation. It's at the lips. And then it's a stop because we're stopping the outgoing air. It's a voiced bilabial stop. Now, what is M? M is a voiced bilabial nasal. This is because, again, it's also articulated at the lips. How do we make an M? We close our lips. We close both of our lips. It's bilabial. Mike, mat, menace. Again, we're making the sound. The point of articulation is at the lips. And again, it's voiced because we're using our vocal cords. Voiced bilabial nasal. The difference between the two sounds is that in M, we're not stopping the outgoing air. Instead, the passage to the nasal cavity is open and the air is traveling out through our nose. So the point of articulation is the same. They're both voiced bilabial sounds. The difference between the two is that one is a stop and that the other one is a nasal. Again, the consonants are rhyming. The reason that I thought that these words were the same, they were both magure, is because the B and M sounds are so similar. There's only one small difference between them, the mode of articulation. But the really insane thing is that this is true for not only the B and M sounds at the beginning of each word, but also the D, the ending sounds of the words as well. Now let's compare D and de. Now, what is a D? A D is a voiced, in Japanese, it's a voiced denti-alveolar stop. So it's voiced because we engage our vocal cords. D, 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 d. It's denti-alveolar because denti, dentist. Denti means our tongue is touching part of our teeth. Teeth meaning denti. But then alveolar, that's referring to the alveolar ridge, the bump that's immediately behind your upper front teeth. That's the alveolar ridge. So the Japanese D is actually a little bit different than the English D. In the English D, the tip of the tongue is just touching the alveolar ridge, whereas in the Japanese D, the tip of the tongue is touching the back of the upper front teeth, and then the blade of the tongue, which is the top of the tongue just behind the tip of the tongue, that's coming in contact with the alveolar ridge. Now let's look at de. Now what this is a alveolar tap. The tongue goes up, the tip of the tongue touches the alveolar ridge, and then it flicks down very quickly. If you've ever been in a Japanese class, maybe you've heard your Japanese teacher say the Japanese R sound is actually kind of like the D sound in a word like ladder. Ladder. This is because D and R, at least the English D and the Japanese R, they're actually articulated in that same exact spot. Again, the alveolar ridge. Now, there are different kinds of Ds in English. There's like the standard stop D, and then also like the alveolar tap, as in like ladder. That's what I'm talking about here in terms of like this, the consonants are rhyming as well. They're both voiced and they're both articulated at the alveolar ridge area. And it's just the mode of articulation is a little bit different. If we go on to mitomere zette, zette, this is the, he's kind of breaking down zettai. He's kind of writing that in kind of a more slang way. With like your friends, you might say, you know, zette ne yo. So like, there's no way that's going to happen. So he's kind of writing it in this kind of slang manner. And then it's majide kore oma. Now, if you're, again, like a Japanese learner, you might look at this oma and are like, huh, what is this? What is this? What is this oma? Like, I know omae, but this isn't omae. There's no kanji here. This is just oma. But again, this is kind of the same thing as that zettai. This is omae, but it's been shortened to like how the person, to kind of like reflect more like kind of everyday speech and like how it sounds when you say omae, like in a really fast manner. All right, so let's break down the meaning for this particular bit. 実力を発揮しきる前に相手の方がバックれてくらしい. So I really like this expression because it's very vivid. It really kind of gives off manga vibes. And what I mean by that is if we break down the meaning of all these words right here. So the kanji here, the first kanji is jitsu. So like if I say jitsu wa, that means actually. Jitsu means actual. And so if you attach that to the next kanji, which is power, chikara, actual power. And then o, that's the object marker. And then hakkisuru. Hakkisuru is, let's see, kind of like exhibit or to use or to show, to demonstrate something that you have inside yourself. So if we look at the meaning of just the first half of this line, actual power, to show. So to show one's actual power. And then we can see that kiru is attaching to the hakkisuru verb stem. And if you attach kiru to a verb stem, that means to do the action of the verb completely. If I say like, yama o noboru, that means to climb a mountain. But if I change that to yama o nobori kiru, that means to climb a mountain completely. Because again, kiru, if you attach it to a verb stem, that means to complete the action of the verb, to do the verb entirely. Completely use one's actual power is what we've gotten up to. And then mae, you might know, means before. So if I attach that to a verb, then that means before I do the action. So before I completely use all my power would be kind of like a very straightforward translation. And then the next line, 相手の方がバクれてくらしい. So this means 相手, opponent or enemy or like the other person, バクれてく. This means to run away. And so again, kind of like a more straightforward translation of this would be like, before I use all my power, my opponent runs away. But the vibe that it gives me is kind of, again, like manga DBZ vibe. So it's like before I even fully power up, my opponent runs away. It reminds me of the Goku Frieza fight where Goku lets Frieza power up all the way. But then Goku is just kind of like, he's already gone Super Saiyan. He doesn't even really need to power up anymore. He's kind of just like toying with Frieza. Here, in this particular bit, 明らかダントツでピカイチ. What's cool about this particular line, again, not only do we see the cool structure with variety when it comes to hiragana, katakana, hiragana, katakana. What's cool here is how the rapper has managed to take dantotsu and pikaichi, which both more or less mean to be head and shoulders above the rest, to like by far to be number one. It's like remarkable how he's managed to fit both of those words into this particular line and rhyme it with the surrounding words. But I really want to talk about this particular line right here because I love this line, and I did look at the English translation of this line, and in my humble opinion, it doesn't quite match the what makes the Japanese bit so cool. And what I mean by that is I think the English translation of the line on like the official YouTube video, like the closed caption transcription, was something like, as usual, I'm leveling up every day, or as usual, I'm getting better every day. And that is a translation of this line. If we break that down, this ai kawarazu, that means as usual. Kawaru means to change, and kawarazu means to not change. So things aren't changing, things are as usual. Ai kawarazu. And then dappi shiteiru, we'll skip this for now. Mainichi means every day. You might know that if you're studying Japanese. So as usual, every day, dappi shiteiru. So what's dappi shiteiru? Dappi shiteiru in the translation, it was to level up or to get stronger every day. And that is, again, a potential translation of this line. And it's 100% accurate. But I think it's better if we break this down at a kanji by kanji level to see what's kind of really cool about this line, because this first kanji right here in dap, again, this is dappi. This kanji means to kind of get rid of. And this kanji means skin. So this kanji together means to shed one's skin. So like if you're talking about like a snake shedding their skin, you use this word, dappi suru. It is accurate to say that you're like you're getting stronger or like leveling up, but it's not that direct in the Japanese. The leveling up is implied. If you're shedding your skin, if a snake is shedding its skin, it's because it is getting bigger and stronger and it has to get rid of its skin. He's kind of saying it in a much more visual and vivid way. And the leveling up and the getting stronger is implied by the expression. So it's much more nuanced and not quite as straightforward, in my personal opinion, as the English translation. All right, so this particular bit is the last bit that I want to talk about, because there's something that's going on here that I thought was so interesting. When I noticed this, it blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, is he doing this on purpose? Because if he is, this is incredible. If we translate each of these lines, we can see every day, ore no mama de iru dake de chou flex. So just being me is like an extreme, big, massive flex. Then we go to the next line. Every day, nobody, daremo kuchi o hasamenai. Nobody can interrupt me. Kuchi o hasamu means like to interrupt. So nobody's going to interrupt me. Nobody can interrupt me. That's what the menai means. We can contrast this kuchi o hasamenai versus kuchi o hasamasenai. So we can see the difference between the can-do form and the I won't let you form. I'm so powerful and I'm such a giga chad that no one can interrupt me, versus I'm so powerful and I'm such a giga chad that even if you try to interrupt me, I won't let you. Like, I'm not going to let anyone interrupt me, even if you try. But what's really crazy about this particular verse, and I think that this is intentional, and if it is, it's just mind-blowingly brilliant, is the structure of the English-Japanese English. And what I mean by that is that one of the verbs that we see continually in this particular verse is hasamu, which we talked about earlier. Kuchi o hasamu, that means to interrupt. But hasamu, just by itself, it means to sandwich something. And if we look at each line of this particular verse, we can see that there's sandwiching going on. There's English, every day, a day, ore no mama de iru dake de Japanese, chou flex. So it starts with English, there's Japanese in the middle, and then there's English at the end. So the English is sandwiching the Japanese for this line, right? But that's true for this line, and this line, and this line, and this line. So for each of these four lines where he keeps using the verb hasamu, he's sandwiching Japanese between English. Now, again, this could be a coincidence. I could be overthinking it, but it might not be. And if it's not, again, it's brilliant, brilliant writing. He's doing like this like 3D chess thing going on here with the words in the structure of the verses themselves. It's just so, so cool. I'm going to end the video here because I think that if I tried to break down this entire song, every line, it would probably end up taking like 5 hours. If you guys want to see that, I could potentially do that. But I think for now, I'll just end things here. If you are interested, I do teach Japanese pronunciation and pitch accent, this kind of things that we were talking about earlier when it, like where exactly your tongue is with like the Japanese T sound and the D sound, or the D sound and the Japanese R sound. I teach all of this in detail on my Patreon page. And I do think it's extremely important to learn Japanese holistically. So get all four fields: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. But when it comes to speaking in particular, I personally think, especially if your goal is to sound as native as you possibly can, that studying pitch accent and pronunciation, preferably sooner than later, is very important, because a lot of these things never get taught. And if they never get taught, you don't learn them and you end up developing bad habits. And it's 100 times easier to develop a good habit than it is to get rid of a bad habit. I've got a lot of bad habits with my Japanese that are still around because I made some mistakes early on that I didn't notice until much later. I wish that I could have learned a lot of the things that I try to now cover on my Patreon. So if you're interested in that, maybe check it out. I'll leave a link down below. But that's enough for today. So I'm going to end the video here. Thank you guys for your support, and I'll see you again soon. Sayonara.